You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hi and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle and today we're here with Mr. John Wyer from multi-award winning landscape company Bowles & Wyer. How are you today, John?
Very well, thanks. Great to be here.
Very good. And when I say multi-award winning, I mean, you've won the lot, really. I mean, Barley Grand Awards, Barley Principal Awards, SGD Awards, Pro Landscaper Awards, amongst many others. I mean, how many have you got? How many awards have you got?
If I'm honest, I don't know. We've won over 30 Barley Awards and we've won the Grand Award twice. And I think the proudest moment in that was actually when we, in 2010, when we won the first ever Design Build Award at Barley. But in 2010, when we won the Design Build Award and the Grand Award for the same project, and it completely took us by surprise. I mean, it was just a magical moment, and the Design Build Award was the penultimate one, and we were really surprised to get that. We were actually surprised to get the Principal Award, but anyway, the same project then went on to get the Design Build Award, and we went up to get it, and we were, at the table looking at it, and somebody got some champagne, and they went on and said, and the Grand Award goes to, and we were just, in our own little bubble, and they said, wow. Bowles & Wyer, we were like, what?
Totally, yeah.
So that one in 2010 was great, but then I think we won it again in 2018, which was also great. But so it was good.
So I'm sure
the SGD Awards are a really hard gig as well. Actually, they're tough. As well.
Definitely earned the right to win those.
Yeah,
I mean, unbelievable. And I've been to the Barley Awards many times, and so many great companies there. The competition is so big now, and so it is a major achievement. And very well respected. Hence why you're here, John, because we want people to learn from the best, and you're definitely up there with the best. So
I don't know about that, but anyway.
Well, I think the evidence shows that you're well worth the slot. So how long have you been in the industry anyway?
Since I was about 6.
Oh, right. Feels like that.
No, seriously. When I first left school, I went to work in a nursery and for a landscape company, because I had decided in my last year at school that I wanted to go into landscape architecture. But I was also very interested in the construction process and how things go together. And in fact, there's a story that I told Jim Wilkinson, that when I went to work in the nursery, which was my first job, I used to eat my lunch really quickly and then go round the nursery with the empty Tupperware and take loads of cuttings, and then which I was allowed to do, and took them home, and then I rooted them all, and the whole kitchen, and my mum's kitchen, was full of like cuttings everywhere, rooting, and
proper passion from such a young age. So you're literally from school then? That's been your life.
Yeah. So I've been in it ever since. So I trained as a landscape architect, but every holidays, while I was training, I would work on site, pushing barrows and planting plants and doing that sort of stuff. And then I went to work in landscape construction when I finished landscape architecture for probably 6-8 months, and then I got a job at Clifton Nurseries as a landscape architect there, as a designer, and ended up sort of 8 years later running the the design department there, and Chris Bowles ran the landscape department, and that's how we started Bowles & Wyer. He's retired now, but
makes sense.
Older than me.
Wow. So it really has been in your blood since you're a wee nipper. So what made you go into business then for yourself? Did you say there that you...
An unconventional reason.
Yeah.
I went into business on my own for job security, because nobody can sack you.
Yeah, unemployable.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot going on in we just coming out of the end of a recession when I left Clifton Nurseries, and I had, Chris and I had been sort of thinking of doing this for a while, and then I left in 1992 when we were just we were sort of at the bottom of a recession, really, just beginning to come out, and that's actually a really interesting time to start a business, because it's completely counterintuitive. You think starting in the middle of a recession, but actually you have multiple advantages, because you have low overheads, you're really agile, you can be really price competitive. But if you've got the experience of working in a slightly bigger business, you bring all that with you, so you can be convincing but competitive in terms of service. You're really hungry, and so we started and really quite quickly the business gained pace, so it was quite good. I mean, those first I think those first 8 years were quite tough. We didn't really start to grow significantly as a business till we'd been going for about 8 years. But
well, that's inspiring for people listening to this, isn't it, really? Because it's not always they see you up there getting the awards, and they just think that it just happens automatically. But it's like they say, it took 10 years to become an overnight success kind of thing. You've been plugging away for so long, all the blood, sweat, and tears. And eventually it does pay off, and there's no sort of short, no sort of fast track to that. You just got to
and I think in any business there are there are peaks and troughs, and those don't automatically go with what the economic cycle is doing, although obviously that's influential as well. But I think that there are times when your foot's sort of flat to the floor and the engine's roaring, and the business is moving forward. And then there are other times when you sort of think, what's that eerie silence? And it's important that you learn to use those times equally, not lose your nerve, take the steps that you have to commercially, but also use those times to really think through strategies and how you can adjust the business. And we learned some really valuable lessons in those times when things were quieter. And it isn't all roses. It isn't, and I think the sort of things that people see from the outside, it's a bit like social media sort of view, that what they see from the outside, they think everything is wonderful. And of course it's not.
No, and everyone thinks the same, don't they? They all think that everyone else is doing really well, and everyone else is looking at each other and thinking, God, why am I the only one that has these issues? But I coach a lot of companies and have done, and every single one of them have exactly the same experiences and the same situations, and the same sort of insecurities or whatever from time to time.
I think it's really important not to compare yourself too much to other people. I wrote a blog about 5 years ago called Find Your Own Hill, and it's about an experience that I had. I cycle, and I was cycling up a hill, and I was tracking my progress on. I'm sad that I'd sometimes do hill training, and I just cycle up and down the same hill 10 times, and I was tracking it on Strava, and I mostly just use that to track my own performance. But I started looking at, I had achieved a particularly quick climb, and I started tracking it against what other people, and discovered that I was like only the 5th fastest person that week, or even I think something like the 3rd fastest that day up the hill, and like the 5th fastest that week. And I looked, and I think I was the 1188th fastest person in all time up the hill, and I started getting really depressed. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just look at other fat old gits my age,
let yourself feel better.
See how they do, so if you can profile it according to weight and age and so forth. And I discovered I was still like 23rd fastest, person of my weight and age.
Just don't bother looking anymore.
Then I started thinking, well, how many of those can make a really good omelette, which I can make a really good omelette, or how many of those can design a really good garden, or do
exactly. You're better than at something.
If you narrow things down to compare yourself on one particular thing, there's always going to be people that are better at it.
Exactly.
And in terms of business, it's all about finding the hill that suits you, and you know, matching your expectations and what you want to achieve to clients, meeting clients' needs. And forget about, you know, it's really important to learn from the competition, but forget about measuring yourself against them all the time, because that's a loser's game. Absolutely a loser's game. You just get fed up, you know.
Brilliant. Such wise words, great advice, because you're always going to find someone or something that's bigger, better, or, you know, not quite the same as yourself in all sorts of walks of life, isn't it? Really? So I think focus on your goals and your dreams, and don't compare yourself to other people, because somewhere along the line you always find yourself feeling a little bit sad maybe. So okay, so you went into business for yourself. There's been a few ups and downs. There's no real straight, smooth journey to success. There's lots of bumps in the road, as you've described, and I'm sure there's been many, many more as well. But what did your business look like when you first started then? I mean, how many people? What did the office look like? How many vehicles did you have? What
when
kind
we first
of jobs
started,
did you do?
just me.
Yeah, oh right, yeah, like it is with many people, isn't it? Really,
just me, and then Chris Bowles joined me after a year. Right. So in that first year, I used some subcontract labour to get things done. I did all the design work myself, did you know, all the management myself, and the first year was quite modest, and then I think we sort of doubled the turnover in the second year, and doubled it again in the third year. And Chris joined me at some point, and then he joined me after a year, in fact, and then it sort of started on a slightly smoother curve after that. So it went up very quickly, and then it sort of was on a slightly smoother curve. So we didn't really start to pick up direct employees until we were about 3 or 4 years in. Right. So we ran it really, really tightly for the first 3 years, and concentrated on using freelancers and subcontractors, and then we started to build our own team after that. And I think it wasn't really until we'd been going about 8 years that we really started to accumulate longer term members of staff. And a lot of our core staff members date from that period, about probably 22 years ago, when so a lot of our senior team now joined us then, and are still with us.
Wow, that says it all, doesn't it? I think that's fairly typical kind of path, isn't it, really? You start off with the subbies, and then at some point you make that transition to get people on the books when you've got enough sort of reputation and business coming and booked in. So brilliant. That's good for, I think, a lot of people listening to this, because they're probably in a lot of people in the same kind of boat as we speak now. So okay, so fast forward to present day. What does it look like now? How many people? What does the office look like? How many vehicles? What kind of projects? You know,
it's a really interesting business in many ways. We're about 50 people, I think a little bit over at the moment, and it's a very diverse business, and we get together as a business. We try and get together, everybody, twice a year, to talk about the business, talk to each other about what we've all been doing, and you know. And in October last year, we did that, and at the end of the day, I had to do a sort of summing up, and I sort of said, well, the funny thing is that if you were going to design a business from scratch, you wouldn't design it like this. And I said, it's a bit like a bumblebee. It sort of shouldn't work, but it does. And you know,
don't fix it.
It's quite diverse. So we are across different markets, and we're both horizontally and vertically diverse. So we do landscape architecture and master planning. We do landscape design. We do garden design. We do construction, design and build. We construct for other people. We do aftercare, and so that's a sort of the vertical integration, if you like, and the horizontal integration or diversification is that we are in healthcare, education, we're in commercial development, we're in private houses, we're in country estates, we work abroad. It's a really diverse business, and that means that it is very complex and quite a difficult thing to manage. But the great advantage that it gives you, that sort of diversification, is that it allows you to, if you structure the business correctly, it allows you to take advantage of different markets. And if you're just involved, for example, in housing development, then that's very cyclical, and there are ups and downs, and you then have to find ways that you can cope with that. Now that's never really happened to us. We've I think we had a 2008, 2009, we had a slightly quieter year in the sort of opening months of the recession, because there was a sort of confidence issue. But other than that, we've never really had an off year like that, because it is so diversified. And I like to think of it as a sort of an amoeba, where we have these sort of different tentacles, different arms of the business, if you like, that are sort of design and construction, aftercare, special projects, and landscape architecture, and we can push resources into one or other arm, and the business can actually change shape according to what the market's doing. But there's a core staff in the center that have expertise that can fulfill different purposes as well.
Yeah, so it makes you really recession proof, doesn't it? I mean, if one area is struggling, whether for whatever economic reason, then at least you've got lots of other different options. So yeah, it's a nice safe business model. You're never really feeling too vulnerable or at risk as a business, are you?
No, you're not. But it is, you have to be right across it in terms of management. And it also creates issues. If you have a really simple business model, which we don't, if you have a really simple business model, the flow of information and the boundaries are very definable between the way the information flows through, and managing how information flows across those boundaries is really important. And if it's a simple business model, you can really tighten it. In a complex business model like ours, you have to be right on top of that. Otherwise, that's where you start to get issues.
So I suppose with your role now then as chief exec, as opposed to being literally on the coalface like you were, I think, does that help you to sort of see the business, look at it from above to some degree there?
Yeah, when I have the time, and I have got slightly dragged more back into operations in the last 12 months, but yeah, having that sort of helicopter view is really important. And I think it's important, even when you're really busy, to try and find some part of the week to do that, to block out some time to sort of try and think strategically. And that's really difficult. And also to take advantage of those times, whether it's walking the dog, out on your bike or whatever, that to just zero think, let your mind freewheel in a way. And that's where those creative ideas and strategic ideas come from. And also just being on holiday, actually take time to go away, and you come back absolutely brimming with ideas.
Absolutely. I think that time is so underrated. I think to take time to actually sit down either in a quiet room or when you're walking the dog, just let your brain settle. And they say like some of the best decisions or ideas come when you're in the shower, on the toilet, or whatever. It's probably because there's no other distraction, there's no noise, but you have that peace and quiet.
The brain resets overnight as well.
Subconsciously, it's doing stuff, which is a whole different subject, I suppose, to get into. But I think if you do own a dog, go for lots of dog walks. If you don't own a dog, get a dog. gives you an excuse to get out for at least once a day, for half an hour at least, just to get that real thinking time, that you time, that sort of, because it's so busy, isn't it? You get back into the office, the phone's ringing, you've got clients calling, you've got emails coming through, you've got text messages going through, and it all becomes a bit too much unless you sort of can control it to some degree. So no, great advice, really. So what do you think the most important aspects are then to running a successful business? pretty big question, but
that is a big question. That is a big question. I think one of the things that I think you have to think very much in terms of client. Well, you have to decide what sort of business you are, first of all. Essentially, whether you're sort of a service or a product business, if you like. And by service or product, I don't mean it in terms of the traditional ways that we think about that, but in terms of service being how clients experience using your business, and product is, you know, what you're delivering. So if you're a landscape maintenance company, you know, having a really systemized, you know, software driven, you know, process, absolutely turn up, you know, sort of product, that's, you know, and then people know what they're going to get, and that's a sort of product orientated business. Or you can be a very service orientated business where it's all about the experience that clients have, and that doesn't mean that you have a duff product at all, or that you know, clients who are experiencing a product driven business have a bad experience. It's really a focus of where your attention is, and we are very much about client experience and about how we react to clients, and how, you know, what process they experience. And I think trying to sell the idea that you deliver high quality is a non-starter, because, you know, you show me one website where you go on and say, we don't deliver high quality. You know? Everyone
says that. Yeah, it's not unique, is it? It's not.
No.
It's
and so we had a really good think a few years ago about what it was that made us different. And I think we learned a lot. Dan and I ran that project. Dan Riddleston and I ran that project about positioning and how positioning really affects the way in which you run your business. And I think that is a really critical lesson to learn, because, you know, firstly, it's sort of obvious, but we sometimes lose sight of it, that meeting client need is at the heart of a business, and therefore you know you're providing solutions that to clients' problems. But I think also we wanted to go much further than that, and so we asked lots of clients using a consultant what it was that made us different from other businesses, and the answers surprised us. I mean, to some extent, you know, the obvious came back: high quality and that sort of thing. But the answer that surprised us was that we were friendly, that that we listened, that we weren't prima donnas. We entered projects with an open mind, and so, you know, when we drove it down to one single word, it was listening. That we listened. And so we sort of restructured the way in which we approach clients and our website around that idea. And the interesting thing about that is that you end up attracting the sorts of clients who have the sorts of projects that gel with the way you see the world. And why that's important is that you both get more out of it. So you know, you as a business, as a team, group of people, everybody in your team enjoys that process more, but so does the client. And you know, you're working on projects together that you're both interested in, and I think ultimately the commercial goal of that is that it delivers higher margin, because happy clients will pay more always. Unhappy clients demonstrably pay less. It doesn't really matter how you cut that, you know, whether they try and negotiate discounts or whatever it is, you know. Basically, if clients are really happy, they will be prepared to pay more.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the shared values as well, your clients obviously resonating with your values and your approach to business, that attracts the like-minded kind of clients.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And so, BMW don't try and sell to Skoda drivers,
No.
and Skoda don't try and sell to BMW drivers.
Yeah.
They understand what their core market is,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean you can be perfectly happy driving one of those cars. They wouldn't make a good family car, either of those. But trying to appeal to your core market that understands and sees the world the same way that you do, and thinks that the same things are important that you think are important. That is a key lesson to learn for any business, but particularly for a landscape business, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Brilliant. I could talk to you about that kind of stuff all day long. I think it's so important that you get that right. And also on the same sort of front, really, is having the right kind of staff, the team members that share exactly the same values as you.
Yeah.
Your values as a business owner tend to reflect your company's ones, and the people you attract to work for you should, and generally the most successful and happy customers or companies all have staff that share the same like-minded values and views.
But it goes a lot further than that. So you'll be aware of the Jim Collins, great to good. It's on the shelf here somewhere. Right. Good to great. Here you go.
That's it. Wow. There you go.
But that book, I think one of the things that is really interesting in that is, there's masses and masses of stuff in it, but the whole thing about having the right people in the right seats on the bus, in sort of whatever that is, 13 words or something, you've got a whole business philosophy. So it's not just about, firstly, the bus. You're all going to a destination that you understand. There may be stops along the way, but you're all in a capsule with similar values in a similar direction, but also the seats are as important as the people, and getting the right people in the right seats is important. So firstly, you've got to have those seats. You've got to understand what seats are needed, and you've got to have the right people. And it's better to have an empty seat than have the wrong person in it, or to try and invent a seat for somebody who you think's right, but there isn't a seat there for them. And it's that combination of getting those things right. And it sounds so easy, and it is really, really hard. Especially when you're up against it and you've got to take somebody on. You've got a hole here and you've got to fill it. Always better to leave the seat empty, leave the hole, than take the wrong person on, because you just live to regret it.
They can do a lot more damage than good. And I think what that comes down to then, John, is actually having established your own set of company core values. Because if you haven't established what they are, then you don't know who to attract or what kind of traits are the right kind of people for your business.
So we work really, really hard on that. We work really hard on that. I mean, we always had a sort of pretty good understanding of who we were and what our values were, but we went through a much more formal process on that, completely internally done. Actually, also helped by a guy called Alan Wick, who's a business coach. And a few years ago, I was trying to think, must have started about 2016, something like that. We ran it for about 18 months. And my wife, Vicky, who's very involved in the business, she's a director and a shareholder, and also has a day job as one of the senior landscape architects. And she ran the values program, and she was the only director, deliberately the only director involved in that. And not only did we define what our core values were and agree those sort of throughout, we had I think a third of the people in the business involved in sort of setting that, but then we had 17 different sub projects that came out of that to embed those values in the way in which we worked. I think we didn't quite complete all 17, but we did do about 15 or 16 of them. So those were, for example, how we embedded it in our recruitment process, how we embedded it in our appraisals process, how we embedded it in our selection of clients, and so on, lots of different things, So, and that is, you can all sit down and in one day go through your values and say, right, these are our values, and then, put them on the website, metaphorically put them on the shelf, forget about it. that just doesn't work, and
No,
people
you've got to bring them
see
alive,
straight
bring them
through
to
that.
life, haven't you?
You know,
Yeah.
the
Gotta live
values
it,
should be wherever you cut the business through, you're going to see the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's like the famous story of NASA when they talked to the janitor in the loo and they said, "What's your job?" And he said, "My job is to put a man on the moon."
That's it. That exactly. You've all got the common goal, that vision, and sharing the same values. They're hand in hand, really. God, John, I'm going to have to sort of move on a little bit because I've just looked at the time, and I could quite easily speak to you for hours, but people are busy, and I'm sure you're busy as well. So, but I'll ask you a few questions. We'll keep these fairly short, but I do want to get them in. What I would like to
keep the answers short as well, then.
Yeah. I think we'll keep it fairly to the point. So. Let me choose some. What strategies would you suggest to implement to improve efficiencies or profit? What would be your top 3, top 5 kind of strategies to improve the efficiency?
Okay, so something that I alluded to earlier is the where information flows through a business. That is really key to how efficient a business is. So particularly the junctions between processes. So the junction between estimating and site, or between completion and aftercare, or whatever. How the information flows across those boundaries is really, really important, because that's when misunderstandings happen, and that's when it's very easy to say get things right first time every time, but that's when it goes wrong.
If you go veer off the system.
So that really starts eating into your margin. I think obviously everybody looks at overheads, and it's really important that you keep your overheads tight, but I also think that margin is not all about keeping your costs tight. It is partly about that, but if you concentrate on keeping your costs tight, you can end up backing yourself into a corner where you're sort of commodified, if you like, and you look at everything in terms of money and value. Actually, it's as important to get your top line right, and to think about how that works, because that's how you build the margin, and that allows you more flexibility. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep an eye on getting your costs right. And it's very easy to allow your buying to become lazy, I think. I think the third thing is, and it's everybody talks about cash and cash flow, but the key to that really is keeping in touch with your clients, and keeping on top of your credit book, if you like, what your credit control, and that's about communication as much as it is about anything else. Telling clients you're going to invoice in, making sure that they understand what's going to be in the invoice, that they don't have queries, that they have got no reason to not pay it. Keeping on top of it, friendly, continual communication, and in terms of credit control, things go wrong when that communication fails. I think, and then I suppose in terms of efficiency, there's a lot to be said for how you communicate internally in a business, because making sure, there's been lots of research done in terms of how people's performance is measured and what the influences are on that. And the absolute top one is making sure that people know what's expected of them, and that they have the tools to complete that work. And if they don't, that the efficiency of what they do just goes off a cliff, and they become demotivated. So if they know what's expected of them, and they have the tools to complete that, that's the biggest thing that you can do to actually drive staff engagement and efficiency, as well as the fact that they feel that you genuinely look out for them, that they're not just a number, that you understand who they are and what they want to achieve as well, and that if that can mesh with the business, that's really how you drive efficiency and engagement in your staff. So it's about alignment of values, and work-life alignment rather than balance. I think.
Yeah, and alignment of goals alignment as well.
Yeah.
And if people genuinely know that you care and that you want them to do well, and you communicate that, you train them, you give them the tools, then they're happy, they're more productive, and ultimately everyone wins.
Yeah.
But you got to get the right people on the bus from day one with that share the right values. Otherwise, if you haven't got the right values, you've got people that are not quite bowls and wire people, then they're never going to be a good fit. It's never going to.
No, absolutely right. Yeah.
If you don't have that, then you're onto a loser from the start. So again, recruitment process, including your values, how you question and interview your questions around the values. And
we do ask a lot of values questions at interviews. You might not identify them as such.
No, but you get a good feel. You get a good feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. That's so good. So good, John. Right, there's one final question. If there was one golden nugget that you could give to anybody who's trying to build their business from all your years of experience, what would it be?
That's a really difficult question.
Just one, only one. You've probably said a few of them, but
I think probably more than anything else, it's make sure that you enjoy it. So we have 3 rules that we ask before we take a job on, and you have to tick 2 of them. Okay. So, and you have to ask them in the right order. So these are, I wouldn't say they're famous now, but a lot of people know them. And it's one of the most sort of quoted things about our business, which is, I didn't originate these. They came from Peter Shepherd, who I worked for 35, 40 years ago. Wow. So it is, will it be fun? Question number 1. Question number 2, will it further our name? And question number 3, will it make money? Brilliant. And if it just answers one of those, don't do it.
So you've got to at least 2. At least
2. And they in that order. So will it be fun is the first question. If it's not fun, it absolutely has to further your name and make money. Yeah. Really solidly tick those 2. Yeah. And we still ask ourselves those questions.
Yeah, that's I think that's a checklist, isn't it? Just a very simple, basic checklist, but so important. Very good. Right then, John, we are out of time, I'm afraid. But if people want to get in touch with you, whether they want to come and work for you, whether they want you to, look at their new project, how would they contact you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So people can contact me through LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. And
you're all over the place, aren't you? You are. All
yeah. So I'm fairly easy to get a hold of. I don't answer my LinkedIn messages every day. No. But I do get back to people. So and or they can email the office at admin@bowleswire.co.uk.
Perfect. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. There's so much wise words, so much wisdom in there, and I know that a lot of people are going to get great benefit from listening to all your years of experience and advice. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great. You've been wonderful. So have a lovely rest of the week, and I'll catch up with you very soon.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, Nick.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.